everyone. Let me begin this session by quoting a few lines from a famous poem. Here it is. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Beautiful lines from Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. Now, there are different ways of analyzing a poem or any literary text, isn't it? How about analyzing a work by focusing specifically on the words? Here we have the poem The Road Not Taken. Now, just focus on the words that are being displayed over here. Don't think about the poet. Just forget about the title of the poem. Don't care about the rest of the factors. Pay attention to the words, approach the poem with an open mind and try to evaluate it. How's that? Welcome to InPot, and this is Shiji Mohan here with a fresh and new series on literary theories. And without any further ado, let's get into the literary theory of the day, new criticism. Now let's get back to the poem. As we start reading the poem, we understand that the speaker is in the middle of a journey and that he has arrived at a place where the two roads diverged. And these two roads symbolize the ways of his life. So that is a turning point. And the speaker wishes he could travel both, which is impossible. So he has to make a very careful and wise decision, otherwise it will affect his future, isn't it? So this poem is a very thoughtful poem with a pensive tone. And as we read through the lines, we also understand that the speaker selected one of the roads less traveled, and that had made all the difference in his life. And there is also ambiguity in the poem. Say if we take one of the lines in which the speaker says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, because it could be a sigh of relief or sigh of regret. Now let's check out the form and structure of the poem. Now you can see that the poem is written in 4 stanzas, and each stanza consists of 5 lines, and it has got a particular rhyme scheme. The poem is written in a combination of iambs and anabas. The poet has employed a lot of poetic devices in this poem, like alliteration, assonance, personification, antithesis, repetition, images, metaphors, paradoxes, everything. So here we have analyzed this poem. That is, even though it is a quick analysis, I should say, we just analyzed it and deciphered the meaning of the poem by concentrating on the words, isn't it? We didn't go beyond the words, we didn't go beyond the text, or we didn't try to explore the external elements. Now, what are the external elements? Of course, one of them is the biographical information of the writer. Here it is the poet. That is, to understand the poem The Road Not Taken, we just concentrated on the words, isn't it? We didn't try to collect any information about Robert Frost. We didn't try to find out anything about his family, about his childhood, his education, career, marital life, love life, nothing. Even the intention of Robert Frost while composing this poem was not taken into account. The state of mind of Robert Frost while producing this poem did not matter. Even the social context, the political context, the historical background, the cultural context, all these elements were considered unimportant while judging the poem The Road Not Taken. We just focused on the words. And that is the new critic approach to interpret a literary text. Because the new critics ignored the writers, they ignored the readers, they ignored the social context, because they emphasized on close reading. Now, what is close reading? Of course, it is carefully analyzing a text by focusing on its syntax, its structure, figures of speech, and so on. And the new critics examine both the formal elements as well as the linguistic elements in a text while interpreting it. Now, what are the formal elements? Of course, they are characterization, settings of time and place, plot, points of view, images, metaphors, symbols. And when it comes to linguistic elements, they are paradoxes, ambiguity, ironies, tension. And that's it. So the new critics believed that the formal elements, the linguistic elements, everything contribute to the major theme of the poem. So that means the rhyme has something to do with the major theme, the meaning of the poem, the message it conveys, even the structure of the poem has something to do with that, and all the poetic devices, everything has something to do with the major theme, the meaning and the message it conveys. If you take the rhyme scheme of the poem, so instead of following the same or typical rhyme scheme A, B, isn't it? That is a common rhyme scheme followed by many of the poets. Here, Robert Frost followed the rhyme scheme A, B, C, D, and so on. And look at the pattern. The rhyme A is continuously used, that is, it is repeated in the consecutive lines, and that itself shows the hesitancy and indecision of the speaker, which contribute to the central theme of the poem. And what is the central theme? Of course, it is the indecisiveness of the speaker to select one of the two roads, which means even rhyme scheme has something to do with the central theme of the poem. So it's also important while analyzing or while interpreting a literary work. Now over to the origin of new criticism. Now, new criticism is a 20th century literary movement that originated in 1920s and 1930s in Britain against the traditional criticism or the conventional criticism. Now, what is traditional criticism? Of course, they focused on the external elements. We have already discussed what external elements are. That is, they gave more importance to the moral and religious, backgrounds. They gave importance to the biographical information of the author, the intention of the author, the emotional effect of readers, etc., which the new critics found it irrelevant, because according to new critics, they believed, that is, the new critics believed that the text is autonomous and closed. That is, everything that is needed to understand a work is present within the work itself. For example, to understand the poem, The Road Not Taken, everything is present here. Why do you want to read hundreds of pages of history in order to find the meaning of the poem, The Road Not Taken? Why do you want to dig up the personal information of Robert Frost to determine the meaning of the poem? The meaning exists on the page. It is in the words. So just read through the words and try to evaluate it. So that is the new critic approach to interpret a literary text. And since the new criticism focused on the object means it is text. Text means the words. So since the focus is on the object, new criticism is also called objective criticism, and it never focused on subject, isn't it? It is also called intrinsic criticism because it gave more importance to the intrinsic features of the text rather than the external characteristics of the text or extrinsic features of the text, or the extra textual materials are not given importance. So it is also called intrinsic criticism. And there are also other terms, like it is also called formalism, because formalism and new criticism are more or less the same. It's also called ontological criticism, modernism, etc. So these are the terms used for new criticism. Over to the major figures of new criticism. When we talk about new criticism, you have to keep in mind the two major figures who paved the way for new criticism, and they are T.S. Eliot and I.A. Richards. Now, I.A. Richards is considered as the father of new criticism, and his major work is practical criticism. And when it comes to T.S. Eliot, his seminal essays, Tradition and Individual Talent, and Hamlet and His Problems are to be remembered. And it is in his second part of his essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, that he deals with his famous theory of impersonality of poetry. And the concept, the objective correlative, was popularized in his essay Hamlet and His Problems. Now, another major figure is J.C. Ransom. That is, the theory derived its name from his work, The New Criticism, that appeared in 1941. The New Criticism did not have any name until the work or until the appearance of J.C. Ransom's work, New Criticism. So that is how the theory derived its name. And the term, the New Criticism, was first used by Joel E. Spingham in his address at Columbia University. Now, the concept of new criticism was going simultaneously in two parts of the world, one in Britain and the other one in America. So, the British new critics are I.A. Richards, T.S. Eliot and William Emerson. So, you hope you know that William Emerson is a student of I.A. Richards and his major work is 7 Types of Ambiguity. Now, when it comes to American new critics, we have J.C. Ransom, Ewa Winters, R.P. Warren, Ellen Tate, Kenneth Brooks, Kenneth Burke, Blackmer, we have W.K. Wimsett, Monroe C. Beardsley, and so on. So, when we talk about new criticism, you also have to keep in mind the major work, The Verbal Icon, which is a combined work of W.K. Wimsett and Monroe C. Beardsley, in which we have the concept intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Now let's see what these concepts mean. A fallacy means error or mistake. So intentional fallacy is the error of attempting to understand the author's intentions when interpreting a literary text. And affective fallacy is the error of evaluating a text on the basis of its emotional effects on a reader. Now, before we wind up, let me tell you about another group of critics who pointed out the shortcomings and limitations of new criticism, and that is Chicago critics, because they all worked in the University of Chicago. And one of the major figures of this group is Ronald Crane, and he criticized the new critics in his work Critics and Criticism. And another one is Elder Olson. So that's all about new criticism, and if you want to know more about this theory, you can just watch my video in which I have included 30 questions and answers. So stay tuned to Inkpot for more videos, and thanks for watching.